Hi, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to Podio Commentary. Tonight we are going to be breaking down, discussing, and spoiling Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. If you haven't seen the movie, come back and then listen. This is going to be a insanely cool discussion. So buckle up, get ready, and let's freaking go. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to Podio Commentary. Today, I'm joined with my friend Sean O'Rourke, and we are going to be talking about the brand new, and I mean like brand spanking new, just hit theaters today, stateside, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Sean, I know you've been waiting for this movie.
Absolutely. It's been the one movie I've been looking forward to all year. And, I set my expectations low because I didn't want to go in and get too excited or buy into the hype. And I'll be honest, I was not let down at all.
I agree with you. I went in and I was like nervous is the best way to describe how I was feeling, right? I'm sitting there like, I'm like getting ready to go, and I'm like, okay, let me, my wallet, my keys, my phone, everything I need, right? And then I'm driving to the theater and I'm just like, oh my God, please don't suck. Please don't suck. And I get my popcorn and I sit down and I'm still just like, oh, right. And then you have like the 20 minutes of previews for some reason. That's still a thing.
It's still a thing.
And I go through the previews and I'm just like, oh, please, please, please. And part of me literally is like looking at the exit, like, do I just make a bolt for it? and it's, well, the reason why I do that is like, or the why I was thinking that was part of it had to do with, it's just, I know that it's the end, right? And it's kind of like Schrodinger's movie. If I don't see it, then it's not technically over for me.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I was nervous a lot like you. I was sitting there and I was waiting for the previews to end. And then I had this mental debate about what was going to happen. Like, was there going to be a Paramount symbol that would fade into something? Were they still going to keep? And so like when I watched Crystal Skull, I remember being in the theater and seeing the Paramount symbol fade into that prairie dog mound, and it crumbled. And I just remember when that prairie dog popped up, I thought, okay, something's not right. This is not how the movie should open. So I was nervous going, well, now that Disney has it, is it going to fade into maybe a German castle? Because we knew kind of that there was this prologue to the film. And I was like, what are they going to do? And so when I saw the Disney castle and the Paramount symbol come up next to each other in tandem, I was like, uh-oh, this isn't in the tradition. So right away, I'm still nervous sitting there when those symbols came up. But as the movie started to progress, I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. And, it just started rolling.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like once it started going, like I was just kind of bracing for impact is kind of the best way to describe it. I was, sitting in the theater and like I didn't sit where I normally sit because I bought my tickets late because I kind of forgot that it came out this week. Not that I wasn't excited for it. It was just like I've had a lot going on and there's been a lot of other movies that have come out and it's just been almost difficult to keep track. Like the younger I was, like when I worked at a theater, I lived and died by Friday releases. Now it's like I'm 41 and I'm just like, I don't even know. When does it drop? Oh, today? Holy crap. It's just, I don't find it as much of a rush anymore. But this one is one that I actually sat further back. I usually sit kind of closer. And I was in the middle of like two families as I was watching the movie. I found like that one middle seat that like nobody wanted to take. So I just took it. And I don't mind sitting there. I think that's perfectly fine to do. And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay. Like what's going to happen, and it kicks off. You're right. Like, for me, I noticed like the in association with Paramount Pictures as I caught that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm like, okay, I'm like, oh yeah, right. It's a Disney. They're working on it. Okay. Like it just, because you don't ever really associate Disney with Indiana Jones and it's not something that I was necessarily going to be focusing on in my brain. The one thing I was focusing on outside of what I was looking at was, again, this is Kathy Kennedy's gig, right? This is Kathy Kennedy's legacy, if you will.
Yeah.
And cause it's like, a lot of people may not know this is that she actually was Steven Spielberg's assistant on Raiders back in 1980 when they shot it. Her first, I think, associate producer gig was Temple of Doom back in 84. And then, from there, she still served. I think she was still an associate on Last Crusade, but definitely an executive on Crystal Skull. So she's been in and around Indiana Jones since its inception. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about. And that's one of the reasons why I think when I looked at this movie, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't agree. Saying we're going full spoilers, so if people haven't seen the movie, this is where we get into it.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming. Did you get the vibe at all that this was kind of a spiritual sequel to Temple of Doom?
I absolutely did. It was dark. And it was one of those things where I had said earlier in my non-spoiler review that I felt like they took the darkness of the Temple of Doom, they peppered in all of the Nazi stuff from Raiders, and then it had that wild kind of twist at the end, kind of like Last Crusade. And I felt like they took the three movies and took all the best components of those and kind of put together this film. And so, yeah, I mean, and the thing with Kathleen Kennedy, she has been there. Frank Marshall is her husband, who's been a producer on these films, and he's an amazing producer in his own right. And so when you have that kind of powerhouse working together, I think like having the full onus on Kathleen Kennedy, even though she's the head of Lucasfilm right now, you're still having Frank Marshall on board as producer. You've got Steven Spielberg as executive producer. So it's not
so is Lucas. So Lucas was also...
is Lucas. Yeah, I saw an interview today where James Mangold was consulting with Lucas on the script, let Lucas read the script and got input from him. And I thought, well, that's great, and so it really did have everyone's hands on it. So, because you do see in social media where they're going, oh, Lucas had nothing to do with it. And blah, blah. I was like, no, dude, come on. This is Indiana Jones.
No, this is always going to have
his creation.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to where the series originated on that beach in Hawaii in the late 70s,
right.
It's just like the story as they've told it multiple times, it kind of kicks off this adventure. The thing I enjoyed about this, I would tell you this, I was a little bit so there were leaks that had come out and some of the leaks were confirmed. I honestly, I know we'd covered a few of the leaks on my podcast, but I don't remember what they were. The only thing I knew was time travel. And I had avoided all of that information until I read that stupid review from the guy who was all in the new movie, they don't, Indiana Jones doesn't show you what Nazis look like and how to identify them, sort of thing. And it's oh my God. But in that review, he spoils the device and he spoils the time travel aspect of it. And I was like, oh, great. God damn it. Because I didn't want to know that going in. Part of me was very reserved about the time travel aspect of it, because I've always felt that time travel is a bit of a trope that doesn't always fit in some of these things. But I can say I was pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. I was actually really happy with what they were able to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was one of the people that was saying from the beginning, guys, that there's not going to be any time travel in this film, because I thought there was some confusion with the opening prologue that takes place in 1944 before it jumps to 1969. And I kept saying it's like Last Crusade, where it started in 1912 and then jumped to 1938. That's all the time travel, and they were going to stop the Nazis before they tried to attempt to change time. But then, I was wrong. And
what I love is that they're opening it with them trying to find the Spear of Destiny.
Yes, the spear that stabbed Jesus while he was on the cross.
The holy spear.
that was a total twist on the MacGuffin, because when they open it up and they talk about it, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not what they're supposed to be going to get. And then when it's revealed that that they were given a fake, that the Nazis were given a fake by somebody, I thought, oh, that's brilliant. And then it was the Archimedes dial that was discovered that was on the train. And I loved how James Mangold tied in this legend of the old train that was filled with all of the artifacts from all different museums and the gold from the Jewish people and everything, and because they robbed them of all their riches, and how that was brought. I mean, it was just so beautiful how they tied in everything in this script. And you got to hand it to the script writers. I think there were 3 or 4 on this, along with James Mangold, who did most of it, but it's still they just did their homework. They really did their
Well,
homework.
what was great about the opening of the film is by going after the lance, the Spear of Destiny, because I always remember it from Wolfenstein 2, the Spear of Destiny. That's always
Right.
how I refer to it. But what I love about that is, again, as I always talked about people when it came to discussing the previous films, right? People always say, "Oh, I love Raiders, I love Crusade, Temple, blah blah blah," and I'm all like, "No, what you like is the Western religious aspect of it." Where you like that it's religious artifacts from Western, from Christianity.
Right.
Whereas with Temple
People
of
didn't
Doom,
connect with Temple of Doom because it was,
it was
Indian.
Eastern. It was
It
yeah, it
was
was
Eastern.
Eastern
Yeah.
religion, and it was like voodoo and Kali Ma and all that stuff. And it's like, and I always loved that as a kid. I thought that was brutal. You
I
know,
still Temple of Doom still is. I have a very it's close to my heart, that movie. I
I
absolutely
love that
love
movie.
Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
I don't know why it gets the hate that it does.
I don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think objectively, it is like the weakest made of the trilogy, but but it's still my favorite Indiana Jones movie. And it's so funny, while I was watching this movie, I'm just immediately, remembering like the raft out of the airplane in the beginning of
Right.
Temple,
Right.
it just of like how absurd some of the stuff is that happens in this movie. I mean, it's less absurd than, let's say, Nuke the Fridge, but then in Crystal Skull, the idea there is people see what it is people don't understand like the logistics that went into that scene. Because for one, it was only a 2 megaton atomic bomb. So it wasn't like a 50, kiloton one that we have now, right? It wasn't like
Right.
a world destroyer. It was literally just a tester. It was a low yield bomb. And that's when he jumps into the fridge is lead lined.
It's
And
lead lined.
if
All the
anyone is,
fridges in the 1950s were like that.
well, not only that, but remember when you were a kid and you had to go get x-rays and they put the lead apron on you to protect you from
Absolutely.
radiation. Like, that was a gag aimed at that. And I thought that was really clever. And of course, everyone just kind of lost their mind by overlooking the joke and trying to like really focus on like the macro versus the micro. And I'm like, all right, whatever in that one. But in this movie, there's a lot of elements like that as well, where they just kind of like get in these situations that are clearly over their head and then they survive, which is also the entire ethos of who Indiana Jones is. That's like the pitch of the character was always meant to just get in so far over his head and then find a way to get out of it. And what I actually really loved about this one is I really liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Helena.
I
Uh,
absolutely love that character. I thought she was fantastic. And one of the things, harkening back to Temple of Doom, is she had Indiana Jones's character arc from Temple of Doom. Most people don't know, we know that it's a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It took place in 1935. And that
yeah,
was back when Indiana Jones was still grave robber. It opens where he's trading the ashes of Norhachi for diamond, and didn't care about the significance of a 3,000-year-old
well,
dynasty.
he was just in it for fortune and glory,
He was in it for fortune and glory, and it
which I
wasn't
will.
until he took those Shankara stones out
Yeah,
of the skull to put them in his bag, and he heard the kids crying and screaming in the mines, that he changed his character arc, which was, it's not about this anymore, it's about this. And for me, Helena did the same thing. She started off as this, I'm auctioning off things to, a black market. I'm stealing artifacts in order to sell them to pay off gambling debts. She was really Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom. But by the end of the film, she realized the significance of everything and became the one who wanted to preserve the artifacts and preserve the timeline. And
yeah.
and to me, that was great. I didn't find her annoying. I don't know where all this backlash came
Well, I
from
think it
with the
came from
character.
her being L3 in Solo.
Right. That
And
makes
her being
sense.
like revolution. And then there's there's lines she has in this that are like very, 1960s feminist revolution, right? Kind of like, or social justice as we would call it today, where, it's like, oh, you're just a grave robber. But then it's like, she's full of shit when she says that, which is like, it's so funny because those lines made it out, right? Those lines were in the marketing and people ran with that as being this, oh, she's just like a blue haired feminist in the 1960s. And then you find out she's totally full of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one of the things, when they were doing the auction and she was trying to get the highest bidder for the dial, and in the previews, Harrison Ford says, you stole it, and then Voller says, and then you stole it from me, and then she goes, and then I stole it from you. That's called capitalism. But what they did was they cut that line right there for the trailer. But she goes on to say, okay, now the bidding is at 100,000. So it was like what she was referring to is, I'm selling this thing. I don't care that you
Yeah.
stole it, you stole it, and you stole it. But by throwing in the word capitalism, it gave red meat to certain
Certain
aspects of,
people.
of the
It's
of the
like
internet, and they're like, oh, it was trigger words, and
yeah, well,
but
it's like
it
in
was taken out of context.
oh, yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like in Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. My favorite line of that whole movie is when the ants come in at the end and Michael Douglas just goes, I know socialism's a charged word, but, and like it was just this really funny gag that would go over so many people's heads and then also just trigger the chuds because that's,
Yeah, all they
don't,
heard was socialism.
that's all they hear. Yeah, but like Helena's character and whatnot, like when it's like when her and Teddy, and I really like Teddy. Teddy's the kid who was with Helena, I'm completely short round, right? It's like, oh,
Well,
how did you meet him? And it's like, oh, he was trying to steal my purse.
he was
and I
trying to
wouldn't
steal
let
my
go.
purse. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where you talk about the hearkening back and this Temple of Doom. It was like, Short Round picked his pocket, and that's how, and then, Teddy, steals her purse. And so she was living the same kind of life in a different time frame.
She kind of was. I mean, they were very much together on that. They were kind of running cons together, everything else, and I really just enjoyed Teddy as a character, like as he, because like when we first meet him and he's like got the little, cockpit set up right there, and there's like a drunk pilot teaching him how to fly.
Now do your flaps. Now do this. It was beautiful foreshadowing because
it really was.
I was literally, I looked at the person I was with, a friend of mine, and I said, oh, dude, he's going to fly a plane. He's kind of like,
I mean, the thing is like so like as I was watching the movie and I was thinking about like the story and everything else. And it's like, these movies aren't necessarily like deep. You know what I mean? Like maybe because the first and third are heavily based in theology as well as the powers of the, the Allied versus the Axis and trying to stop ultimate evil from achieving ultimate power. And this movie very much falls in line with that, with a bit of a twist. I just really enjoyed like how it was basically just like, yep, we're going on an adventure. Shit's going to get real weird. And you know what? You're just going to kind of go along for the ride. Like, but what was fascinating was in this case, going after the dial, going after the different pieces and like what they were trying to do. Like you get this idea of what's happening, like what Archimedes was up to, or at least what happened to him. And then we'll get to the end, but obviously it was completely different from what, really transpired. And I just like the part when they, meet up with Antonio Banderas. And the movie needed more Antonio Banderas. 100%.
Oh, it absolutely needed more Antonio Banderas. He was a great character.
He was completely like, I was like, they killed him, but like I get it, And then there's that line. By the way, there's that line after that too when they're on the speedboat getting away, and Helena's like kind of laughing maniacally.
And then that's my friend was just murdered. Oh my God, it rips your heart out.
Yeah, and you're like, and she's like, oh yeah, because she's now learning to start thinking about other people. She's now learning to start thinking about like not just Teddy, but also Indy. Because she played up the goddaughter bit for a while, and and she was. There's some people I've heard that like, oh, is she insufferable? She's insufferable. Like, no, she's running a con the whole time. She's conning him.
She just wanted to get the other piece of the dial and have him go out to the bridge to find it under the water, not knowing that he had already had it.
Yeah, thinking, So she knew he had it.
She knew he had it because
she was trying to trick him.
She was trying to trick him.
Yeah, she was just trying to trick him into giving it to her, right? Because she was like, she shows up and she's like, here's where my dad said you guys were. Here's where the train blew up. Here's the only river. Here's where we know it's probably going to be at. Yada yada yada. And then it's like. And then, like, she's like, no, I already knew about that. Because when we get that flashback, it starts off from his
flashback.
That was really good. That was really good flashback because it starts from his perspective and then it ends from her perspective.
And that was the first time we ever got a flashback like that mid-movie in an Indiana Jones film. And I thought it worked fantastic.
It did, because I thought they were going to go into the, to the map scene and have it travel across the world. And I'm really glad they did that a couple times in the movie. That always makes me happy. but I just really enjoyed like kind of giving us that last moment with Toby Jones and the fact that he had gone insane over the
He went
span of like
insane. Yeah.
just trying to like solve this thing and figure it out. And it kind of came across like, the number 4, there was the one guy who went insane with the crystal skull.
Yeah. Yeah. The
I forget his name right now, but you know who he is.
Hegsley, or what's it?
Yeah, who was the actor? The actor was in
John Hurt that passed
John Hurt.
away.
Yeah,
He had
yeah.
cancer. Yeah.
And that was like, and he kind of like, it was a very similar kind of mindset of like going insane, but he also had the skull and it was kind of messing with his head. Here it
Right.
was just like trying to understand like this is time travel, but it's not time travel in the way that I think many of us who might have heard time travel will go in thinking this is not this isn't fucking Back to the Future. This is not your DeLorean picking a date and time. This is specific fissures in time that you'll be able to then go through, like time overlapping on itself every couple of
Oh,
years.
dude, that was, I mean, and see, that was the thing, because Archimedes was a mathematician. And so you had to get the math right. But there were advances in mathematics that he wasn't aware of, oh my God, when they get to the sarcophagus that he was in, when
Yeah.
they find it, and she noticed the engraving,
The propellers.
were on the dragon, or
Yeah, well, that's what got me was when they're in Sicily, and then there's Teddy, and he's trying to get the ice cream, and he goes to pickpocket those douchebags,
right.
and they're watching the puppet show, and the puppet show shows the Roman centurions, and then they
Yes.
show this dragon, and I'm like looking at that, going like, oh, that's okay. This is a folklore because even like Harrison Ford said early on in the movie, like we don't know how much of this is real. We don't know how much of this story is actually factual because it was 2,000 years ago. Like stories change. And then we see the dragon and you're just like, oh yeah, maybe they just kind of like, again, it's just a folk tale at this particular point in time. But then as soon as they travel through and you're like, oh, like someone goes, oh, they brought a dragon, and then it clicks. And it was done in such a way that I really enjoyed. Cause like, it's because again, it's obvious once you realize what's happening, but yeah, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here too, because
Oh yeah.
when they get in the whole movie, there's a lot to talk about with the whole movie. Like when they get into the story of the dial and they get into like Archimedes and they start like doing their, like their archaeologist mumbo jumbo, right? Like it was buried here all these years ago sort of thing. I thought it was great. Like I just love that kind of lore building. But what I don't want to get too far ahead of here is part of Indy's journey as well. Like the scene that got me was when they're on the boat going out to dive and they're talking about time travel and she goes, "What would you do if you could go back in time?"
Oh my God.
And he was like, "I would stop."
Oh,
Yeah, I
go
would. He's
ahead.
like, "I would stop my son from enlisting." You
Yeah.
know, and you're just like, and you're like, "Oh yeah, Mutt," because they didn't dwell on it. Like early on, they'd mentioned that Mutt had died, and that
That was in the
Mary,
newscast,
yeah,
right?
and then Marion was divorcing him, and that was what we also saw the divorce papers on. So you kind of put two and two together. And you could kind of even to some extent like apply it to the same arc that Han Solo had in The Force Awakens, right? Where like he loses a son and then that breaks apart the marriage that he had with the woman of his dreams, right? Like that
Yeah,
ultimately.
but the difference in the writing is they explain it by that moment with Harrison Ford, which was never really explained in The Force Awakens, how he lost his son and how it's just all of a sudden it's like, oh, he went back to being a smuggler and she went back to being a resistance fighter
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
rebels. And it's like we were all supposed to fill in the blanks. With this, they actually explained it. And see, that's where like, when the chuds are out there going, oh, they just making them divorce. But when the way they explain it, it was so beautiful. And it was so sad.
It was so sad. I mean, it's like for one, these guys who are upset, they don't have kids. Let's be fair. They're probably never been married or have been in any kind of real substantial relationship.
Absolutely.
But what he talks about though, is he talks about how some loss you can't come back from.
Yeah.
All things considered is what he's trying, is like, I would tell my son not to join. Oh, why? Because he would die and, and that pain would be unbearable for his mother. And that would ultimately break up our marriage. And he's being honest in that moment with her
Oh,
about
it's
like what
beautiful
happened there.
acting out of Harrison
He
Ford
did such
too.
a great job. Like that was like the first time I teared up in the movie. I teared up multiple times in the movie, but like that was the first time that really got me. And that was again right around the time I noticed. No, it was before then in like the tuk tuk stuff. Where there was a kid in the family that was next to me, a couple seats down, that out of my periphery, I could see him, because we're all in these recliners, right? So he's not in the recliner. He's just in, he has it lowered down and he's got his hands on the armrests and they're resting his head on his, knuckles. And he's just fully dialed into this movie.
Wow.
He's just in this experience. And it's like, and that to me only elevated my experience, only made the experience grander for me, because in those moments, what you're looking at is someone, I don't know this person from Adam. I'm never going to see this person again. I couldn't even pick him out of a damn lineup. I just saw him out of the corner of my eye, but that doesn't matter. What you have is a movie going experience where there is some kid that is watching this movie and he is so involved in what he's seeing. He is so into what he is seeing that he is now fully 100% engaged with it. And that is what movies set out to do. And that's when you've got something that's really connecting with the audience there. And my audience was laughing at all the fan service jokes. They were chuckling along with the action. There was some action in the movie that even caught me by surprise for how kind of, oh my God, it was.
Oh, let's talk about the body count.
There's a body count in this movie.
There's so many people that die in this film that are not by the hands of Indiana Jones, but by the circumstances that just go down. That I was like, somebody's got to count how many people have died in this film. I mean, it was just one after another, and you're like, and that's where it became this almost. It's like they combined a little bit of James Bond in this. In
this you think Voller was a little Le Chiffre? Just a wee bit of Le Chiffre?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But the way they were killing people, I was just like,
well, that's Boyd Holbrook, man. Like Boyd Holbrook, he was great in Logan, and I like that he was great in this one too. Yeah. I would have liked more dialogue with him, because I felt like he kind of came across like a real country bumpkin. He's just like, I'm here just to kill, sort of thing. But it's like he didn't hesitate. But I also found to be fascinating too is like, can we cook? I mean, yes, there's a body count. A lot of people die. A lot of innocent civilians die.
Yes, a lot.
Which I'm not always a fan of in these movies, because like I feel like it's just like it's almost unnecessary. But again, at the same time, with what they were attempting to do, they didn't care. Human life meant shit, right?
But let's make sure the audience knows that's listening is that Indiana Jones is framed for a double homicide in this, and this is where there was so much revealed in this movie as it's progressed. I was like, I didn't see that coming. Wow, James Mangold, I didn't see that coming either. And that's what I respected about the film and the storytelling is like, he's wanted worldwide for murdering people. This is a guy who's a decorated soldier, he's
a war hero. He's a general,
war hero,
or he's something. He's like, I think he might've been a general in the last movie. Like he ran mission, he was there at the end of World War II. He saved the train, with Basil. Like he was a hero. And then
now he's wanted for double homicide, and you're just like, what? I mean, mind blowing. It was.
I was really surprised, of how they were able to kind of frame it. I mean, look, they could have spent more time. Like you kind of have to connect your apples and origins to it a little bit, right? Because like they could have spent more time really diving into like why that was a thing. But ultimately, what you guys have to remember is like Voller was, he was a Nazi who escaped, and then he ended up, going and working with the government, which was a real thing.
It was a real thing.
That was a real happen.
Based off of a character that did actually help develop rockets in Alabama.
Yeah, and so
they were like, "Hey, the president's ordering you to go back to Alabama," and I don't want to go back to Alabama. I want to, it was pretty wild how they tied that into the.
But think about that, the U.S. government once again is on the manhunt for an occult-like item. That's another thing that doesn't get talked about, because remember in Raiders when he's teaching, and then here comes Marcus Brody with these two government officers, it's Porkins and the other guy, right?
Yeah.
And they start talking about, what do you know about the Lost Ark? What do you know about this? What we need for you to do is go get it, because we got to get it before Hitler does, and you're our boy on this mission, right? And then here you've got Voller now, masquerading as Schmidt, who is, he helped put man on the moon. So they're giving him whatever he wants, even this fool's errand of going after this device that they don't care about. The government doesn't ultimately care. They probably would have taken it from him if he would have gotten it.
Because at that point they won the war. They weren't worried about that. They just wanted to beat the Russians. So the German guy helps with the rocket technology, and and then they're like, "Oh, do whatever you want to do. It's fine. We're
Yeah,
not going to worry about
we'll
it.
give you some
We're gonna
leeway.
assign you some CIA people to go do your little manhunt." So the CIA was dragged into it, dude, the line that Voller said, which I sat in the theater
Oh,
and you know
oh,
what's coming. You know what's coming
oh,
when he's
right.
talking to the guy
The
who's
waiter, the
serving him,
waiter.
the waiter,
Oh man,
and
that was harsh. I was like, oh, that was such a good scene.
do you feel you
you,
won? Do you feel you won the war? Are you satisfied with your victory? And then he says, you know,
you didn't win
you
the
didn't
war.
win the war.
Hitler lost
Hitler
it.
lost it. And I was like, oh, I mean, it was such a great line of dialogue for an evil Nazi guy to
Well, I
say.
mean, and he's saying it right to this guy's face. Like,
And you could see
where
the
are you
expression
from?
on that guy's face
Yeah,
was
he's like,
just,
where are you from? I was born in the Bronx. No, where are your people from?
where are your
Right.
people from?
And it's just, and I was
Oh,
like, oh fuck, dude, no,
he's
he didn't
going
just say
all
that.
full racist down him.
Like he's
Yeah.
flat out going Aryan on this dude. Like, oh my god, right? And then just that whole notion of like, and then the end of it is all like, you didn't win. Hitler lost.
Hitler lost.
And it's just like,
Oh,
oh man. But see but the thing is that scene is like, it's just such a good scene for Mads Mikkelsen. Like, my God, he did such a great job with that, because these, again, like these movies, a lot of movies like this, you need to have a good villain in order for the audience to love to hate. But like, I also, his journey, or I should say his overall mission,
an obsession of what,
his obsession was such a different, unique take.
Yeah.
Because like what we thought, what we all kind of assumed was like he was going to try to go back in time to, because that's where, Jones says, you're going to kill Ike, you're going to kill Kissinger, right? Like, who was it going to be? To stop the war, right? To win you guys the war. And then he's like, no, I'm going to go back and kill Hitler, and then I'm going to take over and I'm going to win it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
it was
okay.
like, yeah, it was so good. And the way they set it up with the plane at the end and everyone in the outfits, because they would, if they had made it through the portal and got to the right time, they would already be dressed and ready to go to land in 1939. I mean, the writing was so good.
It was really well done. And I'll tell you this, I'm glad they didn't, like, so part of me was like, when they first kind of said, what they're going back to like, was it May 26, 1939 or whatever, the day Hitler invaded Poland, and they're going to go back, and then he's going to, like, he knows where Hitler's going to be because Hitler's going to meet him. So he would show up and kill Hitler and then take over. And then I'm like, okay, that's going to be an interesting thing. Like, is Indy going to have to save the timeline by saving Hitler? That's a concept.
Ooh,
but
that would have been a crazy concept.
That would have been like, just, oh my God, like Nazis, I hate these guys. Fifth movie, oh shit, Nazis, I got to save these guys, and it's like, I got to protect the timeline. And I thought to myself, like, for one, they would need like Dial of Destiny Part 2 to even go down that pathway. And if I was writing the movie, I probably would have written that specific angle of it. But
the only thing is, he did run. Well, not that Hitler would remember, but he did run into him, and Hitler signed the book in Last Crusade. So they were face to face at one point. But
I still love that part. Yeah,
it's so good. But it could have gone in so many different directions. But the fact that it didn't work out the way Voller wanted it, and his math was wrong, and here he is, this rocket engineer that had everything completely planned once he got the dial the way he needed to. And they ended up in a different time, was just amazing.
But the thing is, though, also they do say in the movie that Archimedes it was only always going to go back to that date. It was a repeating date, right? It was always a repeating date.
Right.
It was always going to go back to that siege, to the Battle of Syracuse, because apparently, they kind of gloss over it a little bit. You have to kind of make the leap yourself.
Well, and that's why when the watch was such a key, because, Helena says, you have to make this yourself, because he's handing back, Archimedes is handing back the dial, and she says, no, he belongs in another timeline. You have to make it yourself. And it was my assumption, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but that the watch was left behind because the way the dial worked, it helped him perfect the dial itself, which is why when they went to the tomb, he had a watch on. And everybody's like,
Yeah.
what did he have a watch on for? It's because, and see, that wasn't really explained because after she, cold cocks
I
Indiana
mean, I think that
Jones.
might have been like because there was a reshoot of the ending,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, I'm also what I'm wondering. So when I first saw the watch, to kind of go back to that real quick, when I first saw the watch, I thought, oh shit, Archimedes has come to our time.
Right.
Like he
And
had
died
jumped
at some
forward,
point.
yeah,
Right.
or he had jumped forward and then jumped back, but he got a watch in the process. Not that they were going to go back to his time, because at that point we weren't even thinking that was going to be what was going to happen. Never mind, they already had, like, they'd been setting up the Battle of Syracuse like the entire movie.
I mean, it was the opening thing. It was is when he's talking to the class. He's trying to, explain things to him, and it was foreshadowing. And it's very interesting because it was almost like Last Crusade, where he's, oh, X never marks the spot, and then it was foreshadowing for the X marks the spot. So it was a given that was what was going down when he was
Yeah.
teaching the class. It's like, okay, this is what the story is going to be.
Well, there's that, and I had seen like some set photos leak out of Roman soldiers
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, like they're obviously once like I wasn't too sure like if that was going to be a gimmick in the movie, like they were on the run and they came across Roman soldiers like cosplaying or LARPing in 1969.
Well,
But
because
then
there was a theater troupe that had been around since 1969 that reenact that stuff, and I thought when they were taking the tour of the ruins, with the tourists,
yeah.
that they would see the reenactors. That's what I thought when that picture leaked. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Oh my God, they were really going back to that time.
And what's
And
great about that is that whole scene plays out, and you're like Indy's just like watching these trebuchets and the basilisk, is that what they're, I know it's a snake, but like it's the spears,
the spears that fly, that
yeah,
they
right.
catapult.
And they're just like, we need, like, but those things, they're accurate with those too.
Yeah,
Like the one dude gets like taken out, like
totally. And that's, oh my God, the deaths in this. I can't get over how the people died. And that goes back to just James Mangold and like some of the stuff that was in Logan when Hugh Jackman killed people, especially the people that were trying to boost his rims in the
yeah,
beginning. It's the same kind of violence. The
dude.
deaths
What about in the
this
beginning?
film.
What about in the beginning when he's in the Nazi train and they're going around that bend and the bombers take out the gun and it just starts
Yeah,
taking everybody out the train.
it was an anti-aircraft artillery gun that like aimed down and just started shooting at the train as it
was
in a
going around the
curve.
bend. Yeah, it was great.
That was so good.
I thought that was awesome. And then if you notice when they go past that too, like you see the corpse of the guy burned out. Like I was really surprised that, like, again, you're right, the violence, like when they shot the two people in the the two professors, right? The
Oh my
teachers.
God. Yeah.
And,
That
they
was so
shot
brutal.
both of them, and then it's just like, okay, shit. And then, like, he finds her and, he's got her blood on him and whatnot. And then, like, I was like, wow, that's pretty brutal. And then, of course, with, shooting of like the guy who operates the tours at the ear cave, just killing that dude. And
Or
like,
just the CIA agent, and it was just one after another and then they did that one when the body falls into the road and hits the car under the tires. It was very reminiscent of Temple of Doom.
It was
when the thuggy falls on the railroad tracks and gets hit by the mine car.
I wonder, and I want to ask Mangold this, like, is Temple your favorite movie, or was this heavily inspired by Temple because that was like one where maybe Kathy had more control back in the 80s?
Let me tell you something. I know people love all the different films for different reasons, but the action sequences in Temple of Doom are almost, I hate to say it, but they're better than a lot of the action sequences and setups in the other movies. The second unit directing that Vic Armstrong did on that, and then playing his stunt double, is just amazing. And I think they took beats and said, you know what? We like that. We want to see a person go under a car and get hit by both sets of wheels, just like the Thuggy car. And because that's still to this day, I cringe when I see that shot.
Yeah.
And even though it was stop motion,
there was a lot of really good, there was a lot of good deaths in the movie. brutal. Like I was like surprised, you know what I
Well,
mean? For like,
let's talk about the CGI though. The opening 20
okay,
minutes,
okay, yeah,
24
yeah.
minutes. I look, it was good. Some shots were absolutely breathtaking of the de-aging of Harrison Ford, and some shots just didn't work for me. So it was this tennis match while I'm watching the whole thing where it was like and where it worked was when he was still and his face didn't move. But the minute there was like a lot of action going on, the face would get a little blurry. And then I noticed in the last shot when he puts his arm around Shaw and they're walking and the British have won and they're waving the flag on top of the train. Uh, he says two lines to Shaw with his head turned and his mouth never moves.
Oh,
And
well, I mean, I see that in movies all the time though.
I was
Like,
just like, did they add that dialogue in
yeah,
later?
that's
You
all
know, is
ADR.
that what that was just ADR? I mean, but it to me, like there were little things like that. And but I'll tell you what impressed me was all of the CGI de-aging when he was walking through the train down to where he sat with the other Germans and started eating the food and then got back up.
Yeah.
That was like flawless. I mean, I was just
Oh
blown
man.
away.
I love when he goes into the cart that has the lance and you know, and he kind of like makes the guys, he pours out the drink or whatever and makes them all intimidated. And then he picks it up, starts walking away, and they shine the light at his back and you see
And
the
the
bullet
bullet
hole.
holes, yeah. So he where he killed the German guy to get his outfit. I
Now,
love it.
the thing about that I thought was really kind of the one thing was when you have the driver of the car and he punches him and he knocks him out and then he dumps his body and then everyone runs up on the car, like you have the two biker guys or you know motorcycle guys and then the two other officers that get in the back of the car. No one notices the body, and I thought that was like that kind of took me out of that scene a little bit because I was all like, all right, he clearly just knocked this dude out, pulled him out of the car, and now here comes everybody else. I don't think they're just going to overlook this body on the ground. I mean, maybe
Well,
they
I
would.
think the pacing of everything went so quick that I just think they thought people wouldn't see it. I
Or
think
well,
that's
or you know, we can make the leap of logic ourselves and just go, shit had already blown up. They were already under attack. Maybe they thought this was just a dead body.
it could have been.
You
Could
know
have
what I
been.
mean? And like, but how did you like the scene when they're gonna fucking hang him? Right. And like the bomb just lands and it
Lands,
starts
and it was
breaking.
classic as it went. It was slowly going through the rug. It was like a Warner Brothers
It
cartoon
was,
with the bomb in the rug going from floor to floor.
but the
It's great.
noose is what saves him.
Yeah, yeah.
I just thought that was great.
And then when it's attached to that big
Oh,
piece of wood or
yeah.
whatever it was, the gargoyle, and then it starts going down the thing and he's trying to get that thing off his neck because he knows it was so classic, like Warner Brothers stuff. That
It was,
shit.
and
it
that's
was great.
that's also very Indiana Jones,
Very
like
Indiana
very
Jones.
like again, people. I think people like you know that are gonna say this movie sucks. Like they're really not seeing the forest through the trees, or they're seeing the forest through the trees, whatever it is, right? Whatever that like they're not looking at like the incidentals that make this movie really a fun watch all the way through. Like it's not. You know, like the CG is kind of hit or miss with the de-aging, and also in other parts of the movie, the CG is a little hit or miss. There's some scenes where they clearly shot in front of a green screen, or maybe it was the volume.
Well,
that
but listen, you know, just like what happened in Temple of Doom, almost the entire fight in the mines was Vic Armstrong because Harrison Ford threw a disc in his back. He was laid up on his back for weeks. He had to have surgery. They kept shooting the movie without him. Same situation here. He tore his he tore his shoulder, and he was out for 3 weeks. So they kept shooting all the stunt stuff without him, the stuff on the horse, the stuff in the tuk-tuk trucks, everything. And then what they did was they just shot his mediums and close-ups when he was ready. And it showed because you could see the backgrounds looked digital, but at the same time, it's like, you know what? It's if you understand the context of like he was hurt and they did the best they could to make the schedule and everything instead of hold it. I mean, the movie between that and it was shut down for COVID too.
well,
You know,
you know, one of the things I wanted to cover was like a bit of the production history at the beginning of this. Now we're 44 minutes in, but what people don't realize is this was originally announced in 2016 for a 2019 release.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
then Spielberg was going to direct it. And, you know, they've been working on the script. Spielberg stepped down in 2020. And when they'd already overshot their release date by a year. and then Mangold comes on in. Then you still have COVID and all that stuff that's going on, and so they went and they did the movie, and it's like, again, like I'm an ardent defender of Crystal Skull. I love Crystal Skull outside of the monkeys, other than like, and the monkeys are just something I don't care for. It's not that I hate it. I'm just like, all right, whatever. But like, I love the story. I love the lore. I love, the characters and everything else. It's a little campy at times.
Yeah, I like Crystal Skull. I thought Crystal Skull was good. For me, I just the overuse of CGI, and then they told the prairie dog joke 3 times, and the one rule in comedy is you only tell a joke twice, and they did it 3 times, and it got too repetitious with the prairie dogs, and so there were little things that I had problems with, but it felt very much like an Indiana Jones film once he was in the jungle, and then the stuff when he's in the tomb and with Mutt and
Yeah.
everything. I liked all that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what I really what I loved about Crystal Skull is Harrison Ford did a really good Sean Connery impersonation, right? And did you even catch that there was another joke about that in this movie too? There was a no ticket joke in this movie.
No, what? No.
So
when was that?
okay. So it's after the Nazis show up at the college, and he gets on the police horse and he's riding away, and he goes into the subway, and then he out. I love is he like, you got the one that's coming directly at him, and then he just jumps over to the next track, and then it immediately cuts back, and there's a train coming behind him, which I thought was awesome. And then he jumps, he's able to get out onto the platform, and then hands the guy the horse, and he gets on in there. And then, as the CIA agents are coming on down, and then he sits down, and the people are all just looking at him, and he just goes, "Subway's faster."
So, well, yeah, Subway's faster.
So
yeah.
it's such a no ticket line. You know what I mean? It was just a little nod to Crusade, and it was done in a way that I really liked. And
did you see
funny.
the nod? Did you see the nod, the dialogue nod to Crystal Skull? What's that in the water? Oh, they're eels. They were swimming around like snakes. Don't call them snakes. It was kind of like, it's not a snake. It's a rope. It's a rope. Pretend it's a rope.
as soon as they, when they point out what's in the water, it's like, oh, are there sharks? Like, oh, there's no sharks around here. Those are eels. My audience those who knew what an eel, like what it looks like, knew exactly what the next little bit was, and they all started laughing, right? And then we all started giggling, because it's just like Teddy's like, oh, they look like snakes. No, they don't. No, they don't.
No, don't say that.
Don't say that. Don't say that. But then what was crazy about that scene too, going back to the brutality of the bad guys. So they're all underwater, and you have like the one Antonio Banderas's assistant, right, his buddy, and that dude is up on the top of the cliff, right, looking down. And they cut the line.
They cut his line.
And then he just falls. Like
drowned.
He just drowns. But what about the other dude, the big burly guy that like has Teddy handcuffed to him?
Handcuffed underwater and can't. And see, I was wondering how, because he was so massive. I'm going, how are they going to kill this guy? Like, is Indiana Jones not going to fight this guy like he did the Russian, and not going to fight him like he
tried?
Did the German? He tried. Yeah,
twice. He
hit him with that sign, and it just didn't do anything. And you're like, this guy's a beast. They found the biggest guy I think I've ever seen in my life.
He's huge. Yeah.
And then the way he died, I was like, oh my God, like the kid was so smart Teddy was so smart to just undo the handcuffs and lock him underwater. And then he just screamed. And you're like, oh.
In my mind about that, what I thought would be like, because, there's going to be clearly like, when I watch these movies now, and this is what I hate about engaging in the online culture war when it comes to entertainment, is like certain scenes, I'll be like, oh God, here we go. Like, this is going to be something they call out, right? But in that scene, I'm like, someone's going to complain, well, how'd that little kid know to do the thing with the handcuff, blah, blah. But I'm like, if it was short round, nobody would have said a thing. Well, nobody would have cared.
And again, the little kid was taught how to fly a plane. And,
by drunk pilots at a bar.
By a drunk pilot at a bar. But the first time we see Short Round, he's driving a car with a box
exactly
rope to his foot. So he's driving the car. And she even says, you got a kid driving the car? The Kate Capshaw's Willie Scott. And so the fact that like there were so many callbacks to Temple of Doom, this is the question that really has to be addressed. And then even Harrison Ford climbing the wall saying, I drank the blood of the Kali Ma, and I'm
Yeah,
going,
I've been tortured with
I've been
voodoo.
tortured with voodoo. I
And
drank the
but he
blood of the
never
Kali
says like
Ma, and I was
I
just like, wow, he's really saying that dialogue.
yeah, and then it's like I thought they just did a line for the trailer, you know what I mean? And then what would crack me up though about that too is like he doesn't go like I found the Ark of the Covenant and it killed a bunch of Nazis. I found the Holy Grail, but it's now buried underneath like several thousand tons of rubble in the, in like what the Sumerian desert, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Or the Jordan Desert. I forget where it's at now, but anyway, it's like he doesn't mention it. He goes like, "Oh, I've drinking blood of Kali Ma and I've been tortured by voodoo," and I'm like, this entire movie is a spiritual sequel to Temple of Doom.
Temple of
They
Doom.
just keep referencing Temple over and over and over again. And as a again, like an ardent defender of Temple, because people always like to talk shit about that movie. I'm like, no, like this is I feel seen, with this movie. I feel really seen with this. But I can understand why people out there might be a little apprehensive to it, because again, a lot of people I think look at the core trilogy as just being, this is peak adventure storytelling. Do we need more? And I'm like, I'll tell you this, man. I'm walking out of the theater today. There's a couple, a couple that's in their 60s. We're kind of walking side by side. They're talking about the movie. We start chit chatting about it, and they ask me. The lady goes, "Well, is there going to be another one?" And I'm like, "No, he's 80.
Yeah,
like
but
he's
you
80."
know what was very interesting was, yes, the movie ended, but that hat grab at the end,
That was yeah.
I just went, what does that mean?
Oh, no, it's complete. I know, right? Because it's kind of the same thing with the end of Crystal Skull, where it's like Shia's going to get the hat. And he's like, not today.
Not today.
Another thing, another reference to Temple of Doom, the bugs.
Yes.
The bugs.
Thousands of bugs all over their bodies. Get it off me. Get it off me.
I'm like, you guys, all you're missing now is a freaking minecart ride. And that could, you could even look at,
or eating something weird like monkey brains or something. I mean, they literally picked apart Temple of Doom, and I loved it. Oh, let's talk about Anthony Gruber was in the movie. The guy that was supposed to be that everyone wanted.
He was in this movie?
He was in the film.
Who was he in the movie? I didn't see him in the credits.
Yeah, he's on IMDb's listed, and he was one of the guys that was auctioning they were auctioning off the dial. He was sitting around the table. He's one of the people that pull the gun. He has a mustache on and blonde hair pulled back in like a red velvet jacket. I have a freeze frame of it from, because an international trailer had the shot of him and Indy standing next to each other when all the drama's going down. And so I can't wait, because I tagged him on a tweet and I was like, dude, you're in this movie, and I'm waiting for him to drop a photo of him and Harrison in the gear, just like he did for the Age of Adeline. But he's absolutely in the movie.
Oh, wow. Yeah. He's 1944 Indiana Jones double, and he's the Dutch Prince Bitter.
Yeah.
Wow. So I did not know that.
So, and that's great that he was the double for the 1944 Indy. That's fantastic. Probably stunts and things like that. The fact that they keep using him, and I'm telling you, it was, we could go on and on about Solo, but it was a mistake not to use him, I think, in Solo.
I like Alden Ehrenreich, but I see, I mean, but again, like what we have in regards to like what Solo was, I adore.
No, I like Solo. I'm not gonna
but I understand, I understand that would have been a thing, and I do think, look, I do think that this is not the end of Indy. I do think this is the end of Harrison Ford as Indy.
Yeah.
But I look at something like this and I go like, look, it's the same thing I keep saying about Star Wars. I'm like, if you look at the Disney Plus, what their breakdown was for 2022's original shows that were most watched, Boba Fett and Andor were your number 5 and number 6, meaning you've got your pre-OT and you've got your post-OT shows set in those timelines were the most watched. Meaning that's your playground area, right?
Yeah.
That's your playground area, and you build content out of those like 10 years. You build the content out of that. And then I kept saying this when I watched Crystal Skull. One of my favorite things about Crystal Skull was when like they keep talking about all the missions during World War II. Right, like the Berlin job.
It would have been exactly. Oh, you were a double agent. Remember? Yeah, all that stuff.
The Berlin job. Yeah. So it's like all those little elements of it where it's like, oh, here's what he did in World War II, and it's like at least with this, we did get to see him at the end of World War II. We get to see him going after these artifacts, and obviously, like getting from there. And I just really love the setup, and I love John Williams' score was amazing.
I thought the score was amazing. I will say one of my gripes was not enough Raiders March
Yeah,
throughout the
yeah, but I
film.
think they did it like there's a couple times where it's like they did it really well, and there's other times where I thought it could have been used. But I will say, as much as I enjoyed John Williams' score, it was missing, because again, we're going back to Temple of Doom here, right? So like, you've got the I don't know the name of the song, but it's like dun 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 dun, dun, dun 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 dun.
That's the Nazi kind of theme created for Last Crusade.
No, no, no.
Because
That's
they
when the
use that
kids.
a
That's
lot.
what. That's when the kids get out of the jail, right? When he frees the kids at the end of Temple,
Oh,
you
dun, dun,
hear
dun,
that
dun,
score.
dun, dun, dun,
Dun
dun,
dun
dun,
dun
dun,
dun
dun,
dun dun. Dun. Yeah,
dun,
dun dun dun
dun,
dun.
dun. Yeah,
Dun.
okay,
Yeah, yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah. That one. I don't know his name. Someone mentioned it to me before on stream, but it's like I forget his name. And it's like something like that would have been like as kind of like iconic as that, because the Raiders March is still the Raiders March, and every time that thing came on the screen, I had a smile on my face, man. Like I was dialed into this movie. I can't wait to watch it again. The
I know.
ending of it that brought me to almost like literally. Okay, let's talk about the ending, because we've been on for almost an hour. So we
Yes.
try to wrap it up. But it's like when we get to the ending of the movie, and he's like, they're back in 2000 or 20, or was it 213 BC,
213 BC. Yeah.
right? And he's there, and he's like, I want to stay. And you're like, this is also like a trope, right? This is like I was just watching Welcome Jumanji: The Next Level, and like Danny Glover's character has terminal cancer and chooses to stay in the game, right? So it's like you always see those kind of things pop up in these movies.
Right.
Someone's like, I'm just going to stay here and I'm going to learn a lot. But then Helena's like, she realizes that she's losing like the last bastion of family she has. So
Right.
she doesn't want that. And then, but she's like, you're just going to stay here and you're going to muck it up. So in my brain, I'm thinking like what he's going to do is he's going to like stay there, and he's going to like write a note, like Back to the Future 2, and have it like wait 2,000 years to get sent to Mutt to like not enlist in the military.
Don't enlist. Right.
Which would then alter the course of history past that point. But at that point, he's already been long and gone, dead for whatever, But but then, because he's bleeding out, he's dying, he wants to, he wants to stay, he wants to learn.
He's got nothing else to live for.
Yeah. And he basically says it. He's like, who am I here for? Like, what's
Yeah.
the point? Like, I don't have anything anymore. And, and I know people are just like, oh, they emasculated my boy. And it's like, dude, but do you not know what it's like to get older?
And
like,
let me tell you something. I've got friends, and I know relatives that are in their 90s, and they've said, I don't know why I'm here anymore. I just want to die. And some people get to a certain age, and obviously that's not really what happened here, but he was bleeding out. He had been shot, and you could see in his eyes, he was welling up with tears going, I don't know why I'm here, but that is a real thing. And if you can't acknowledge that, and that's why when Helena just knocks him out, and then he wakes up back in the regular time, and she was able to use the dial, and it's just a quick cut to black.
There's a couple times of that in the movie too, where they just kind of like quickly accelerate a scene, like the diving scene. He's like 3 minutes once you're on the bottom, and it's like they got down there and back up real quick.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like half a ship with all these Centurions, and they find it, and it's like, okay, let's move the plot along, sort of thing.
Right.
But you're right. Like he gets to that point in his life, and he's like, what do I have? Like I lost my son, I lost my wife. There's a tracking shot in the apartment in the beginning. You see what I believe is an older photo of Marcus Brody, as well as the photo of Henry Jones Sr.
It's on the mantle,
from Crystal Skull. So it's like they're showing you that again, people are gone. That's in his life. Sala's old, but John Rhys Davies was great.
We haven't even talked about Sala. Dude, he
know.
was so good in this movie, and how he was in the film was fantastic, because it relates to what recently went down in the Iraq War and the Afghani War. Is when you have people, locals, that are helping you, whether it's translators or not, they help get them out and bring them to the US and give them refugee status and relocate these people, because they're going to get murdered in their own country. And that's what happened during World War II. There was a beautiful moment where he's got the kids surrounding him, his grandkids, John Rice Sala, and he says, this is the man that brought me to America after the war. And it just made sense after all the stuff we've heard.
What I love though is about their exchange is when he takes him to the airport and he goes, He's like, I brought my passport, and he's like, I miss the sun. I miss the sand.
The
I miss
sand.
waking up and that sense of it, whatever new adventure is going to happen that day, and it's like, again, it's like that old, it's like someone getting older and like, wanting to relive the glory days. And then that's when Henry's like, Jones is like, well, yeah, but those days are behind us. And
Yeah.
he wasn't really expecting to get into what they got into here, but he also didn't want to drag Sala in. And I'm kind of like, part of me was like, just let him get on the fucking plane.
I
Just like
know.
bring him along. He was great in Raiders and in Crusade and whatever. But again, he's in his 80s. It's like,
Yeah.
he's up there. Like, what's he going to be able to do? It's like they're not going to be able to like ride a bunch of camels into the desert. They're not going to be able to take on a Nazi tank. They're not going to be able to like fucking get the Holy Grail and do all that. Like
But you're gonna have the chuds out there that are gonna be like, oh, he was just driving a cab. He's a cabbie in New York. And but if you've ever been to New York, even now, and you get into a cab, they're all driven by foreigners. I mean,
it's not it's not an uncommon thing.
Uncommon thing. And if he relocated in the 1950s or the late 40s, whatever it was, when he got his family out of Cairo, and after the Nazi thing, because the Nazis, people forget that even though Indiana Jones went on, the Nazis still, because that was 1930, what was
39,
36 was Raiders, was 36.
It was,
38 was
no,
Last
it's
Crusade.
39. It was 39 for Crusade.
It was 39. Okay, so you've got those years, and you're like, World War II didn't end until 1945. So
yeah, it's still like 5 more years.
They would have killed Sala and all his family if he had stayed behind in Cairo and just tried to blend back in.
Yeah.
The Nazi agents were all over the place. So
it makes
all
sense.
made sense. But you're gonna have this sect of people that just pick it apart and go, oh, look, they made him a cab driver. He's just nothing now. He used to be Sala, and then and this person used to be that, and now they're that. And it's just like, dude, guys, it's storytelling.
But Sala was also an undercover agent, like basically, or an undercover asset in Raiders. Remember, like he ran a digging crew, right?
Yeah.
Like he ran a digging crew for like he was working with the Nazis, but he was collecting intel for whomever, and like because Jones had traveled the world and knew a lot of people and stuff. Like I did enjoy the crack that they made about the Wright brothers being from Indiana.
Oh, right.
And it's like, he just looks up. They were born during the Civil War.
How old do you think I am? Yeah.
I thought they went to school with you. Like it was just like
that was a good
fucking
line.
shit. It was
when Sala delivered that stuff at the airport, when he said I miss the sand. I mean, it reminded me of the scene in Raiders where he's like, the Ark is something that's nothing to be trifled with, like he or whatever the line was. But he delivered it so stoically, you were just like, oh my God, this is just great.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He was awesome in it. And again, I remember, 23 years ago now, going to the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, and there's John Rhys Davies, and he's doing the, he's doing the Sala voice, and he's getting you in on this adventure. And then, and all the subsequent, I haven't been since 2019, but I did go on the Indiana Jones ride in 2019.
And they have the video monitors with him on it, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite. Yeah.
Through it. Yeah.
It's like my favorite ride at Disneyland, just to like the build up to get on the ride. And then when you get on the ride, going on the adventure with Jones and hearing the Raiders march and everything, like I love that stuff. Like, so when I'm watching this movie again, like as we get to the end there, like when he's there and he's like, I want to stay, and Helena's like fighting for him, like he was almost willing to like accept just defeat. Like she's like, what, you're gonna stay here with like no medicine and leeches?
That's what she said. Yeah, she made that comment. Yeah,
you're just gonna die here is what's gonna happen. And then she's fighting for him, but he just wants to let go. And it's like, you kind of get it. Cause and not to drag it down or whatever, but it's like my grandfather, who always kind of reminded me of Harrison Ford, is one of those weird things. When he died 3 years ago in a couple months, but like, he died at the age of 88. And when he was like 80, my grandmother had been dead for a couple years, and he was like, I'm ready. He's like, I'm ready to go. I'm just running out the clock. Yeah. And you hear this from people around that age.
I was saying that earlier. Yeah.
And it's just like, and I'm like, my grandpa, like the fuck, bro. Right. Like, no, stop it. And it's like,
we won't know till we get there.
Exactly.
But I will say the ending, when he finally comes to and he's back in his apartment in New York City, and and big time spoiler alert, Karen Allen walks in, Marion Ravenwood, and she's got groceries, and she makes the comment that the refrigerator needs to be full and all this stuff, and then the whole reenactment of the stuff in the ship from Raiders with the
Yeah.
she was like, are you back, are you finally back, or
Like, are you, she's, well, the way she delivered that line, are you back, Indy?
oh my God.
And it's like,
I was just melting.
it's like just that line, and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I mean, like, clearly, like, they had their problems, and he probably went distant after Mutt died, and she went through, all the stuff. And he's just like, yeah, and then he's like,
but the
I
whole,
heard everywhere.
I heard everywhere where, and then she lifts up her elbow and he
Yep.
kisses her elbow. And I was like, oh my God. And he did the whole thing just like she did to him. And that just destroyed me. I mean, it really did.
Well, next to me, there was, again, that family, right? Like the dad, there was like the daughter was sitting next to me. It was the dad and like the son and the mom. But like the daughter didn't understand the context of that scene. And so the dad was like explaining it to her while we were watching the movie. And I'm just like, that's cool. Like, again, I had a really good theatrical experience watching this movie. Because it was full of Indiana Jones fans who love the franchise, who love the character, who understand the references. And it's like, it's beautiful.
My only complaint, I think, is, with Crystal Skull, they referred to Mutt Williams as, Mutt. They called him Mutt because he was like, he didn't know who his father was or whatever the case may be. And then, Helena had the nickname Wombat, which they never really explained, I don't think. And so he would call her Wombat throughout the whole thing. And I thought, Mutt, Wombat. I'm like, why do they have to go with these silly names, these nicknames for these characters? I think that would be my only thing I could have done without, was the Wombat thing.
I would have liked, the Wombat thing was like, I get it's like a term of endearment. Like, I understand that. But again, like, I would like to know where that came from, because that wasn't ever explained. But again, it's like, I liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
I thought she was great.
The scene with when she kind of like the double cross scene.
Yeah.
Was awesome. She was great in that scene. Very just, like, she had everyone all eaten out of the palm of her hand on that one. Just
everybody thought she had turned, and then she backs up
and
to get
also
the dynamite lit with her, and you're
with
like,
the cigarette. But you'd mentioned before, right, at the how we're kind of referencing back to Temple. What is it that Voller gave her?
It was a Zippo.
No.
Oh, it was
a bag full of diamonds.
It was a bag full of diamonds, just like Willie Scott. Oh my God.
That was what he gave her, because he says, like, she's like, I want $100,000 in cash. We'll call it square, right? And he goes, I think this might be worth more to you.
This might be worth more to you.
And she opens it up, and it's a little pouch full of diamonds.
Diamonds. Oh.
It's like, come on, this is so Temple of Doom in so many ways. It's like, and it only makes me love the movie more to look at it from that perspective. And it's like, look, I know people are going to listen to this. People are listening to this right now live who clearly have been disagreeing. I've seen the chat. And look, here's the thing, guys, we can totally disagree on this, but my whole point of this conversation with Sean is to be like, if you disagree, let us kind of bathe you in positivity about this a little bit.
Yeah.
To kind of go like, we're diehard Indiana Jones fans. Like, we would tear this movie apart if it was bad.
Yeah, no, if it was bad, I would have been like, and that's why I set my expectations so low when I walked in. I just was like, this is either going to go south or it's going to be a good movie.
I was,
and it
so
was
thankful solid, it was good.
And I've been saying forever I had faith in James Mangold, because I know he's a competent director. He's between Copland and Night and Day and Ford versus Ferrari and Wolverine. I mean, the guy's just delivered solid films.
310 to Yuma. Don't forget about 310 to Yuma, which is one of my favorites.
Great Western.
He's such a good director. And this one he took to a bit of a pulpy place, right? It was very pulpy in how he approached it. And again, that is, very kind of serialized, over the top stuff. And that's what Jones is based off of. It's like, you can have it be like that, have it be in some ways comedic, in some ways dark, in some ways, sci-fi to an extent. And then, of course, you've got then you just got the character, and the character sells it. And Harrison gave a grade A performance. And
it's some of the best Indiana Jones we've seen as far as dramatic performance, because again, like, he couldn't have done all the stunts that like you had in all the other movies, because he was 79 when they filmed it, and his character was supposed to be 70 in the movie. If you go by his age in the years of the films, the canon, he was 70 in the movie. So he's 79 playing a 70 70-year-old, and they did do some digital work on his skin and face and stuff as the 70-year-old, because you can clearly see it from the footage versus red carpet stuff. So
Yeah.
they got rid of his chicken neck in a lot of the scenes. He had that, that chicken neck underneath. But again, dude, this movie's great. I can't wait. I'm actually going back tomorrow in full Indiana Jones, my full cosplay, to the theater for the shows, to be in the lobby, to hang out and take pictures and do fun stuff like that. So I'm really excited about
That's
it.
cool, man.
But yeah, I'm gonna be going back and seeing the film, and it's unfortunate. I think it's probably gonna underperform. I think it'll probably top out at about 450 million worldwide. And it's funny, Crystal Skull made 790 million back in 2008, and it was not released in China. And I don't believe this one's getting released in China as well. I don't see it on the calendar. So
all I can really hope is that there's enough positive word of mouth that it carries it it carries it over the holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's got 2 weeks before
Yeah.
Tom Cruise comes in and makes another $1 billion movie. I mean,
No, I agree. That's all I can really hope for, is that it can do that. I think this is going to be one that people might be a little bit apprehensive on up front, but then as time goes on, I think they're going to warm up to it.
Yeah.
I understand not wanting to see your hero's age. I understand not wanting to see something continue just for the sake of it continuing. I get that. But I also feel that, like, this is a worthy entry into the franchise. And if this is where it ends, then good. Let it end here. To end it on a high note, Indy's happy.
It's a good bookend. And it's funny. I was on Rotten Tomatoes before we started the stream, and I was looking at a lot of the audience comments, and they're loving this. And I don't put a lot of stock in Rotten Tomatoes because I feel like it can get bombed all the time, with reviews. But the audience comments are pretty damn good for people, and a lot of them are saying the same thing. It's not great. It's, but it's a great way to end it. That's all you keep hearing, is it's a great way to end it. One more movie with Indiana Jones, it's like and that's really what you want. I just don't want it to fall completely flat on its face like The Flash did. But the cool thing about the marketing for this movie is they didn't show all their cards like what happened with The Flash. They just gave way too much footage away during The Flash's marketing, and they did not. There were things that I went, oh, I didn't expect that. And if you did that to me in the theater, you did good. You did a good job.
Good.
Yeah.
I think they did a great job. And I you know what, if this is, I don't know if Kennedy's going to stay with Lucasfilm after this. I think she's done.
But isn't her contract's up anyway after this year?
No. She renewed like last year, I think. So,
yeah, but it was only for 2 years. So
was it? Maybe it is.
Her contract is up at the end of 2024. Her contract's up. So she's got 6 months. So if she leaves, it'll be 6 months early. Like
but I also feel like Star Wars is at a point where it needs new leadership. And it's like, I kind of feel everything was leading to the Indiana Jones movie, to be honest with you.
Right.
And again, like, as just a diehard fan, as a person who fucking was crying, not crying completely, but like I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah, I had tears in my eyes too.
Like
Absolutely.
I literally sat silent during the end credits, and I was like fighting back the tears. Like, and I don't know. I was just like, even if you saw my little quick thoughts of it, right? Like, I got a little choked up. Yeah,
in the car, I could see.
Yeah,
that. Yeah, it's beautiful.
This movie, you guys, I don't think people understand like how much Raiders, Temple, Crusade, Crystal mean to me. Like, I'm just such
huge.
Big parts of my childhood are the first 3 movies, and it's like it's like, I just love the character, I love the world, I love the music, I love everything about it. And so getting one more adventure and having it actually tie into like my favorite Indiana Jones movie is just icing on the cake for a fan like me.
And I will say this, and I said it in my video when I covered my little non-spoiler review, is the end of The Last Crusade was, there was a 700-year-old knight from King Arthur's court guarding the Holy Grail, and all he had was a book to read, and he could sip from the cup of Christ to keep himself alive until he was vanquished by someone else. And if you bought that and you think that's the best Indiana Jones film, which there's a lot of fans out there that go, The Last Crusade's the best, but for some reason you have a problem with how this movie ends, the third act, where there's time travel and they go back to 213 BC and they meet Archimedes. Like, if you have a problem with that, then I don't understand how you can like the Last Crusade. And so the people that might be poo-pooing on the third act on this is just ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Like it's it's what I keep saying. I say this on Hollywood After Dark all the time. If you don't like movies, stop going.
Yeah, change the channel.
You know what I mean? It's like
whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, like my entire point of doing and I really want to do more of these discussions for Podio commentary, because I just want there to be like this love of film, this real, like, I want people to hear the passion, right? Which is one of the reasons why I'm not on camera, is because like I can just convey it better with my voice.
Sure.
But it's like, Sean here works in the industry. I've done little bits of stuff in the industry, but it's like the thing about Sean and I is we fundamentally love movies. And when we approach this kind of stuff, it's like we come at it from just a place of absolute pure joy.
Yep.
And so like when I'm watching a movie like this and I get to the end of this movie and I'm like welling up because it's over, and I'm like, I have to now go back to like, this is it. This is the end. And it's sad. But,
and they could have killed him like Logan.
I thought they were going to. I really thought they were going to.
And I already had Han Solo ripped out of my heart. And I was prepared that Indiana Jones was going to die at the end of this thing because of what Paramount did with when they released all the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and they took out old Indy out of all of them.
They did?
Yeah, because they didn't want to be hamstrung to that, because George Lucas said the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles were canon. So every cold opening and reveal or follow up at the end, they removed the old Indy from it.
Wow. Even when it was Harrison Ford in like 92?
No, he's the only one they left in.
Of course they did, because he was young. He was still young. With his fugitive beard. But
yeah,
okay.
And so for me, like, I thought, well, if they're removing the old Indy with the eye patch, they don't want to be beholden to maybe having to explain the eye patch and explaining these things. And I thought, well, that means they're probably going to kill him like they did in Logan, like James Mangold's like, we're just going to put this guy, and then when you started hearing the promo stuff where Indy was like, Harrison Ford's like, this is my last, there's no more, when I'm gone, he's gone. When you start hearing him say these things, you're going, oh, they're going to kill him. And then he gets shot and you're like, oh, he's bleeding out. And it's just like, oh, don't do it.
I can't help but wonder, was Harrison Ford just fucking with us again? Because he did the same thing with The Force Awakens. He very much was like that with The Force Awakens. He was very much just kind of like, I'm kind of out of retirement now, and I'm gonna, I'm just there.
Well, and it's, I posted something on my Twitter. It was an interview. He's been doing the press junket stuff, and a lot of people, a lot of the chuds are out there going, oh, look, he's like, he's divorced, he's in a chair, he's in his underwear, and then you find out that it was Harrison Ford who wanted all that in the script and said, I wanted the reveal of me to be in my underwear holding a glass that was empty, like I had been drunk, and that my life is in shambles. And when you hear that he contributed these beats to the story, you're like, Kathleen Kennedy had nothing to do with that. That was Harrison Ford. Like he really wanted to tell an older Indiana Jones that needed a redemption arc, like in this film. And I think as much as he enjoyed making Crystal Skull, I really feel he wanted to do a bookend to Raiders and really close it out on a high note with the fans. And I think he accomplished it. I think he got everything and if the movie bombs at the box office, doesn't matter. Harrison Ford, he did what he wanted to do, and he did justice by what he did with the character.
Yep, and I'm very much excited to own the movie on home video when it comes out.
And I can't wait to see all this special effect behind the scenes on how they did all the digital stuff. And I hope that Anthony and Gruber, gets some screen time, in the behind the scenes, kind of like I just watched the they just dropped the gallery thing for Mandalorian season 3. I always like watching those because I work in the film industry, so I'm on sets all the time, and for me it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, now I get how they did that, or it's fun for me. I love all the behind the scenes, so I can't wait for that. So I definitely have to get this on on physical media, and hopefully on Blu-ray that they release all the bells and whistles.
I'm hopeful that they will. I really am, and I think they will because there's still a market for that to some extent. But yeah. So I guess to quickly kind of wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Rational with the $5 super chat. Thank you. Says I feel like they shot two endings: the ending we saw and the ending where he stays in the past. I feel like that was the case as well.
I agree.
But I like the ending that we got. I prefer the
me
ending
too.
that we got. I didn't want him to stay in the past. I would have understood it, but I felt it almost would have been a bit of a cop out if he would have done that. But that being said, I'm very happy with what we got. And then Ahsoka Tano here says, skipping it since I always found Temple of Doom highly racist. I'm Indian and from Hindu family, and I don't eat monkey brains. I completely understand. There's nothing like that in this movie. When we're talking about the stuff from Temple, it's just
we're talking about action
themes,
sequences,
like action scenes.
Yeah,
it's not like there's no scene where they sit around. The only, I would say probably the worst part is there's like the one Miss whatever is screaming nonstop in the car. That was like the only really annoying part.
Yeah.
During the parade scene, that was about it. But otherwise, no. This nothing like that at all. They're they don't do anything like that here.
I wanted to ask you real quick before we wrap it up. The shot that in the trailer where Indy rears up on the horse with the fake CGI face that looked really, really bad. As I was looking for it in the film and I didn't see it. Did they just put that in the trailer and then decide it didn't work, and so they didn't put it in the movie?
I mean, I have to go back and double check for it again.
I'll be honest with you. I think they left it out.
Well, good.
Yeah. Somebody went, you know what? That didn't work. Let's leave that out. The rear when he reared up.
Yeah. Let's because that scene was fun on its own. It didn't really need that. And they were, and I just, that was probably like my least favorite scene of the movie, just because I felt like it was like there was so much going on with like the ticker tape and everything else.
You couldn't see things, but that was on purpose because they knew they were going to have to, the stunt double would be doing a lot of the work. So everything was very confusing, but still fun. I mean, come on, it was fun. Everything was fun. I enjoyed the movie. If you had to score it 1 to 10, what would you give it?
I'd give it a solid 7.5.
See, I was thinking 8. But
I mean, I could it would be like, I'd say, maybe 8. I'd give Crystal Skull like a 7.5, but I only kind of mark it down because of the monkeys and some of like the snake rope scene. John Hurt was a little kind of comical at times, and that kind of drug it down. But there wasn't any of that in this movie. Like there was comical moments in it, but there wasn't like overtly Acme cartoon levels of comical stuff. And I think that was James Mangold really trying to like drive home a more grounded film to an extent. And I'm kind of glad Spielberg didn't do it. Not that Spielberg wouldn't have knocked it out of the park, but even Spielberg said about Crystal Skull, he's like, well, I made the movie my friend George wanted me to make.
And it's true because, interdimensional beings. Oh, fine. We'll just do it, George. Because they had been trying to get the script right and he didn't want to do aliens. I mean, he said it in the behind the scenes, but I will say there was a little bit of the Spielberg. There were no Spielberg oneers in the movie. I know that like Mangold wasn't going to try to copy Spielberg, but it did lack a little bit of some of the warmth that I think Spielberg puts on these movies. But again, it was a different tone. It was dark. And Mangold is a different type of storyteller, but I think he did well playing in this sandbox.
Yeah. And now he gets the Star Wars movie. So let's see how he does with that thing.
Yeah. And I don't think the time travel was overplayed. It was barely in it. And again, like without the right calculations, you couldn't even get it right. So it wasn't like you had, infinity stones, or it wasn't like you had, a DeLorean. This was a different type of time portal type thing. And I think people will understand it when they see it, but I think it worked. I think all of it worked.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to watch it again. Well, all right. Thank you very much, Sean, for coming on.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, man.
We got to do this again. This was a fun 1.5-hour conversation.
It flew.
It went by real quick. There's a lot to discuss with the movie. My only hope for people who have listened to this or will listen to this is that if you take what we have to say with just a grain, with an open mind, know that we just love this kind of stuff and we're going to come at it from like the most joyful perspective possible. And these are movies that we adore. And hopefully you guys find some value in that. Hopefully you find value in the movie and in every movie you watch, because it's not just made by one person or two people. It's made by several thousands of people across multiple years and in different formats, and everyone puts in their own effort and their own work. And and I think that always is something you should look for, is what's best about a movie rather than what's worst about a film, because people work really, really hard on that. And that's something I always respect. So
Absolutely.
that's just my little pitch for that. But as for everything else, Hollywood After Dark will be going live here in a couple of minutes. I just got to go take a leak and then get some water, and we'll be going live. I was going to go live like a half hour ago, but whoopsie. But it's all good. And so, all right, everybody, see you over there. Thanks again. Peace out.